A wooden bird shaped like a glider, a prehistoric idol covered in code, a mammoth tusk engraved before writing even existed. These aren't myths, they're real objects, found, photographed, preserved, but no one can explain them. These are the artifacts that don't just break the timeline, they just simply don't belong. In 1898, a small wooden artifact was unearthed from a tomb in Saqqara, one of Egypt's oldest burial sites. It was carved from sycamore and measured about 7 inches across, with curved wings, a vertical tail, and a body that looked suspiciously aerodynamic. Archaeologists labeled it as a bird, but not everyone agreed. Some noted that the tail resembled a rudder, not feathers. Others pointed out the lack of legs and the uncanny resemblance to a modern glider. The artifact didn't just look avian, it looked engineered. Mainstream Egyptologists claimed it was a child's toy, or perhaps a symbolic falcon. But in the 1970s, researchers attempted to reconstruct it with modern materials. With only slight modifications, the replica flew, not fluttered, flew. That one test ignited decades of speculation. Could the ancient Egyptians have understood basic principles of flight, or was the carving symbolic of something else entirely? A forgotten technology, a dream someone had of flight, or a vision for something they witnessed. There are no other artifacts like it, no papyrus records describing aerodynamic tools, and no tomb illustrations of ancient test pilots. And yet, the Saqqara Bird sits in the Egyptian Museum, quietly challenging what we think ancient Egypt was capable of. Whatever it was, one thing is certain, it was built with purpose. But if ancient Egypt was dreaming of flight, the next artifact comes from a culture that made something far stranger than dreams. They have wide eyes, oversized heads, and bodies that seem more designed than sculpted, and they were made thousands of years ago. Scattered across Japan, especially in the Tohoku and Hokkaido region, archaeologists have unearthed over 18,000 small clay figurines known as Dogū. These artifacts date back to the Jomon period, roughly between 14,000 and 400 BC, making them some of the oldest stylized sculptures in the world. But the Dogū don't look primitive, they look unfamiliar. Each figurine has exaggerated features, bulbous eyes, jointed limbs, narrow waist, and large, detailed torsos that appeared armored or cloth. Some seem to wear helmets or goggles. Others resemble humanoid beings with postures and expressions that feel too intentional to be decorative. Mainstream historians describe them as fertility figures or religious idols. The large hips and emphasized female features support that theory. But the truth is, no one really knows. There are no surviving texts to explain their purpose, and no consistent design across regions. French researchers have proposed bolder theories that the Dogū represents ancient visitors, that they're depictions of spacesuits or protective gear, that the Jomon people may have seen something, or someone, they tried to memorialize in clay. But of course, there's no proof. But also, no explanation for why a Neolithic culture with stone tools would create figures so elaborate, so stylized, and so uniform in their otherness. One particularly striking figure, the so-called goggle-eyed Dogū, has become iconic. Its eyes are large and inset, almost like lenses. The body looks reinforced, segmented, almost mechanical, but it was found in a site dated to over 2,000 years before the earliest known armor. Was this artistry, ritual, memory? No one can say, but the Dogūs don't look like gods, they look like animals, and they don't look like people. And while these figures raises questions about form, the next artifact challenges our understanding of time itself. It was buried in ice for over 30,000 years, perfectly preserved, but one detail didn't belong, someone have carved into it. Russian scientists discovered the frozen remains of a woolly mammoth. The animal was so well preserved that its last meal of buttercups and grass was still in its mouth, but it wasn't just the mammoth's condition that stunned researchers. It was what they found on its tusk. One of the giant ivory tusks bore markings, not scratches, not cracks, but deliberate engravings. Some scientists dismissed them as natural abrasions, others weren't so sure. The marks followed a pattern, curved intentionally, and resembled symbolic etchings seen in later human artifacts. If these engravings were real, they could suggest that Ice Age humans had not only hunted the mammoth, but also marked it, possibly ritually or as a form of early record keeping. But the only problem with that is the dating. The mammoth died tens of thousands of years before the first established writing systems, and if the marks were decorative or communicative, they would represent one of the oldest examples of symbolic behavior ever found. No tools were recovered at the site, no cave nearby, just snow, silence, and the frozen mystery of a carved tusk. Some believe it may be evidence of cultural sophistication long before previously accepted timelines. Others argue that the grooves were made after excavation, though no one has conclusively proven either case. And if ancient humans did carve into a mammoth's tusk over 30,000 years ago, what else were they capable of? Because if we're rewriting the timeline already, the next artifact might just tear the page out completely. They were found in the Neolithic grave, small and unassuming, but what's etched into their surface may rewrite the origin of writing itself. In 1961, archaeologist Nicolae Vlasa uncovered 3 small clay tablets at the Neolithic site in Tărtăria, Romania. The artifacts, buried alongside a female skeleton and ritual objects, were dated to around 5300 BC. That's over 1,000 years before the earliest confirmed Sumerian writing. Each tablet bore incised symbols, some geometric, others resembling pictographs. They look structured, deliberate. Some even match known Sumerian cuneiform characters. Mainstream scholars were cautious. They suggested the marks were symbolic or decorative, perhaps proto-writing, a cultural precursor to what would later develop in Mesopotamia. But others pushed harder. What if this was writing? And what if it meant that complex communications developed independently in multiple parts of the world? That theory, if true, wouldn't just shift history, it would fracture the narrative entirely. But here's the problem. The context is murky. Vlasa reportedly baked the tablets to preserve them, which may have altered their dating. The surrounding graves' goods suggest a ritual context, but no written records explain the symbols. Some historians call them forgeries. Others defend their authenticity with passionate certainty. If the Tărtăria Tablets are genuine, they push the invention of writing back by more than 1,000 years. It relocates birthright from Sumer to southeastern Europe. The debate remains unresolved. The symbols remain undeciphered. And the tablets, though small, remains one of the most controversial archaeological finds in the world. But the final artifact isn't small. It's towering, ancient, and covered in symbols no one has ever decoded. It stands over 9 feet tall, carved from a single slab of larch. It may be the oldest wooden statue in the world. In 1890, workers digging in the peat bog in the Ural Mountains of Russia unearthed the strange object. It was preserved in the acidic, oxygen-starved layers of the bog, perfectly intact. What they found was the carved wooden idol, later called the Shigir Idol. Radiocarbon testing would eventually date it to nearly 12,000 years old. That makes it more than twice as old as the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, and older than the earliest known writing systems. In fact, it may be the oldest known example of monumental wooden sculpture on Earth. But the real mystery lies in the surface. The Shigir Idol is covered in geometric carvings, zigzags, chevrons, and what appears to be humanoid faces. These aren't random marks. They follow patterns. They divide the idol into sections. They suggest intention, and possibly even a lost system of symbolic communication. Researchers have struggled to decode them. Some believe the carvings may represent a creation myth, a warning, or a sacred lineage. Others argue that they're maps, or even a primitive form of storytelling. But so far, no theory has cracked the code. What baffles archaeologists is not just the content, but the timing. In 10,000 BC, humans were taught to be nomadic, tribal, and focus purely on survival. The idea that they could create symbolic, monumental art and preserve it throws a wrench into our understanding of post-glacial hunter-gatherers. The idol was carved with stone tools. It was designed to stand upright, likely in a sacred place, and someone or some group cared enough to decorate it with meaning. Its age is confirmed, its origin is known. Its message, however, remains a complete mystery. 5 artifacts, 5 contradictions, and 1 truth. The history isn't broken, it's shattered. Drop your theory in the comments. What are we missing? And if you like more archaeological mysteries like this, subscribe. There's plenty more artifacts waiting in the archives.